Hey, everybody. If you want to grab a seat, we're going to get rolling here with the seminar and the tasting. So tonight, we are lucky enough to have Geoff Deman, head brewer at Free State. So he's also brought us some beer, and something new that we've kind of been test driving is doing the tasting seminar together. We're going to do that again today. So you're going to get to try some beers, listen to Geoff talk. So most of you have probably, or some of you have probably been here before when he talked, and you already may know this, but something you may not know about Geoff is that he actually started at Free State in 1989. And so there was a break there where he was in Seattle brewing.
I wasn't brewing then. I was a busser.
And he was busting tables at that point, and then came back to Free State. And I want him to tell the story. Some of you probably heard it. It's a good story. I want him to tell the story himself on his very first homebrew. So I'm going to ask him to come up here and start with that, and then we'll get the tasting and the seminar started.
Sure.
So a hand for Geoff. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, that's okay. So a little bit about my start in brewing. So I worked at a dude ranch in Montana in 1993, the summer of 1993 in Montana, and it was amazing. And I didn't want to come back to school. I was going to school at KU. And so I had friends out in Berkeley that were going to school out there, and I took a semester off and I went out to Berkeley, stayed with them. I actually slept on a porch couch that entire time. And but one of the friends who's now a winemaker in Sonoma was homebrewing at the time, and so I wasn't doing anything, so I learned to homebrew initially with him. And then when I finally did make my way back to Lawrence to continue my schooling at KU, in the interim, Lawrence homebrew supply had opened up. And so I was like, I'm in. And so I went full bore, all grain from the get-go. And when I was out in Oakland or in Berkeley, one of the places that I would go drink was this place called the Albatross. And the Albatross was run by this Englishman, and they had all these great dark lanes and a fireplace, and we drank a lot of Theakston's Old Peculiar. So like that's what I wanted to make. I wanted, everybody kind of is inspired initially by a beer and a style, and they wanted to. So Theakston's Old Peculiar is what I wanted to brew, and researched it and researched invert sugar and all these things. And man, I overshot my gravity on that beer so far, and I thought, okay, well, we'll see how it goes. And it was, out of the fermenter, it tasted good, and I bottled it, bottle conditioned it. And I was bottle conditioning it in the cellar of my apartment in the student ghetto on Tennessee Street. And when I went to go check on it a couple of days later, it was all gone. It had been stolen. So I never got to taste it. And I really hope.
Took it?
No, don't know who took it. I really hope it was awful. But I'm pretty sure it was good. I mean, I really got into brewing that summer, and it was great, and it was a perfect time, and it was really great to hang out at Lawrence Brewer Supply. Those guys were really cool, really fun, and had varying knowledge, but like it was great resource beginning. And I'm sure you've experienced that kind of thing too. And I got my degree in art history. So my options were kind of limited. I could either try and go to grad school, which had some appeal, but honestly, all my friends in school were in grad school, and they didn't seem like they were really enjoying it. So instead, my girlfriend and I moved out to Seattle, and I knocked on a lot of doors, and I was intending to either become a photographer because I was also passionate about that at the time, or become a brewer. And I quickly realized that I wasn't going to be able to. I like having knowledge of my pay, so I didn't want to be beholden to a pager and, have to, at a whim in this new city, go do a photography gig. So knocked on a lot of doors and finally got a job with Mar2025 Brewing Company. It was great for a whole month. and then I realized that I would like the $1 more an hour that the homebrew shop, Liberty Malt Supply, was paying. So went there, and actually that was a great experience for me to be there for about a year, because I was around some really great industry titans. Val Allen, who was the head brewer of Pike Brewing Company, was associated with Liberty Malt Supply. Liberty Malt Supply was owned by Charles and Roseanne Finkel, who were the starters of Mar2025, which imported Samuel Smiths and Lindemans. And so I was exposed to all these great beers. And so that was a great experience. And I really think I got my love and my chops for recipe development during that time. And then I begged Val to hire me on as a brewer at Pike, and eventually did that. And so that's where I got my chops for the nuts and bolts, actual professional brewing end of it. And so that's my story up until 2002, at which time my wife then wanted to move back to Lawrence. And so we did, and I sent her, she came back to look at houses, and I sent her with a 6-pack of beer to deliver to Free State Brewing Company, because that was the only brewery I wanted to work at. And within a week, and along with my card, and within a week, Steve Brock called me and said he might have a job for me. So moved out a month in advance of her, and the story's, I'm here now. Yeah, I've been here for 23 years now. So yeah, and it's been great. But so my role now is I still do a lot of the creative end, but I'm also dealing with a lot of like administrative stuff and making sure that our quality is high and dealing with contracts. So it's a different beast now. I like both things, but I really enjoy being in a brew house more than anything. And so the beers that we're going to try tonight, they are all but one were brewed downtown, and they're basically R&D beers. They're beers that may make it to production at some point. I don't know if you know, I don't presume that everybody knows our story, but we have 2 breweries. We have a brew pub downtown, and we have a production brewery off 19th and Moody. And so the vast majority of our production is obviously in the production brewery. That's where we bottle and so basically we don't do pilot brewing. Or never did. Downtown is our pilot brewery, and so there's a lot of beers that go through there. We try and change it up. I'd estimate that we probably, it used to be more with, you know, business isn't quite as robust as it was when we were the only game in town. So, you know, obviously, and that goes with restaurants as well. I mean, there's a lot more restaurant choices, a lot more brewery choices, and bar choices. But I'd estimate that we have, you know, probably 10 to 12 different styles of beer available throughout the year. And usually there's at least 1 or 2 new offerings every month. So you're going to be trying some of those today. But as you can see, we're going to be talking about lagers. There are no ales here, although technically one kind of is an ale because it's fermented at ale temperatures. They all use the same yeast. And I don't know. Yeah, all right. So you already know this stuff. We can go back. If you ever want to contact me, you know, my email address is my initials. You're welcome to my initials at freestatebrewing.com. You're welcome to get that tried. And then, so this first beer is, we're calling Mar2025. And it is, it's somewhere in between a Vienna, a Märzen, and it's closer in style to what the Wiesen beer, the beer that they actually pour at Oktoberfest, maybe a little darker than what they even do there. So this is probably ultimately this is closest to Vienna in style, and that's hence the this is an example of our recipe sheet. So I have the red circle there because I wanted to talk about one of the things that I have forever done in my brewing career since I got to Free State and started developing recipes is oftentimes diluting the wort. So when I build a recipe, I'm not trying to get as much extract as humanly possible out of the grain bill. I'm actually treating it much more like what a distiller would do when distilling. You know, you want to eliminate the hearts. You know, you want the good stuff in the middle. You don't want the nasty stuff at both ends. So, you know, I want to stay away from all the tannins that get leached out at, you know, at the end of a flour. So what I will do is build the recipe with a dilution into it. So oftentimes we will end with, you know, three Plato wort in the final runnings, whereas some brewers will take it all the way down to 1, and that's when you start to get kind of that tannic bite from things. So this beer, as you can see, it has some Weyermann malts. It's got Pilsner, Munich, Cara Munich for color, and a little bit of sweetness. That's acidulated for you know, controlling of the pH. And it has just a hint of smoke volume. And this is a trick I learned from Ashley Carter out at Bierstadt Lager House in Denver, which I don't know if you've ever been there, but I highly recommend it. They make incredible lager beer. And they have a great lager brew house, and their Helles is amazing. You can drink it all day. It's big and malty, but very clean and refreshing. And that part of that maltiness is accentuated by that smoke malt. Smoke malt acts as kind of a seasoning to emphasize malt characters. And so this beer also has middle fruit, which has become a real favorite. You know, we've seen a lot of brewers favoring this German hop. I think it's the hop that for like mass market beer, most brewers like Coors Banquet. And Middle Fruit is the hop used in Coors Banquet.
It's a great beer.
Yeah. And Sapphire, which is also another great German hop, a little punchier, a little bit more peppery character to it. The thing is, we like our beers to generally like to finish dry and crisp and have nice balancing bitterness. So so that's the Vienna. When we use pretty much exclusively Augustiner for our lagers. I know a lot of people use 3470. But most of our lagers are used with Augustiner, and it tends to give a little bit of a round mouth feel, but also can finish really dry. Any questions?
What's the, like, homebrew equivalent, the Augustiner, strain?
No. Augustiner, I think.
How long do you?
Honestly, I think it is probably Augustiner. We order it as Augustiner. It doesn't have numerical. It doesn't have. I know a lot of these strains have a number associated. I've never heard of one associated with Augustiner. Yeah.
How long does your ferment take, and how long do you lager?
Depends on the beer. I've got some notes here because I don't remember everything. So this beer, here's some stats for this beer. So this beer started at 12.5 Plato or 1050 specific gravity and finished at 3.3 Plato or 1013 specific gravity. And that's a 74% attenuation. And the pH was 4.3 at the end of that. And it was in the tanks for 33 days prior to filtration.
Question from YouTube. Courtney wants to know what percentage smoke malt are you using?
It's from 0.5% to 1%.
So that was actually partly my question. I know y'all made a Helles at Free State with a little bit of smoked malt.
Yeah.
Do you use a similar amount? That's 0.5% there.
No, we use quite a bit more than that. And we've actually made smoked beers many years ago that were 100% smoked malt.
Yeah, if you get like the best roush malt, you can go super heavy.
Right.
Yeah. But no, that smoked Helles was really nice. I think Tom, that was one of Tommy's recipes. And I think it was about 30%.
Oh, wow.
So
It did not taste like 30%.
yeah. Yeah. Any other questions?
Not a question, but a comment. I really like the aroma of this, first pour.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
This is so good.
Well, you guys like it. So a little bit, so we have little notes in the bottom of our recipe sheets. One thing that I wish we had, but we don't, is we don't have an RO system. So we are using Lawrence City water that we then charcoal filter to remove chlorine and chloramines. And that's all we do to treat the water, other than add, calcium chloride to soften it. Yeah.
Does most of your water come from the river or Clinton Lake?
Well, good question. It depends. It depends on time of year. It depends on what the status of the reservoir is. It depends. But there is a crossover. Most of it's more fluid where the production facility is, where water comes from. Sometimes it's coming from Clinton. Sometimes it's coming from the river. But it's pretty much guaranteed that most of the stuff being brewed downtown is coming from the river.
Do you get good information from the city or the county as to what is in that
If
water?
I request it, yeah, but I'm not very good about doing that. And what we do to monitor things, because we can't really, like I said, we can't necessarily affect that mineral content or anything. Really, all we can do is remove the chlorine and chloramine, and so we do monitor chlorine and chloramine in the filtered water. And if we ever see any of that passing through, we will rebed the filter. So we only have to do that every like 8 to 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Have Colgan come out and rebed the charcoal filter. But we do have to do it. We did, there was a period of time when Steve was still there that we were having experiencing, what happens is you get these phenolic characters that you're like, where is this coming from? And it's from the chloramines and fermentation. And so we finally figured that out and rebedded the filter and solved the problem. Okay, so the next beer coming out is Alley Dunkel. This is a beer we do have in bottles, and it's a seasonal release. We kind of switched up where we release it seasonally. It used to be right on the coattails of Oktoberfest, and now we have Northern Lights as that beer, and we after Northern Lights we have Alley Dunkel, which is, we use, this is actually a recipe from the production brewery, so you can see the quantities are different. And we take advantage of our bulk silo because the pricing is much better on that than if we were to use 100% bag malt. Unfortunately, the economics of things play a big part in decisions that we make. I would love to just use nothing but Ironman malt. It's just not feasible. And one thing is that these recipes are semi-fluid. I mean, they change a little bit from year to year. The idea is to keep the essence of that beer the same. But what I try to achieve here, and you can tell me whether or not I was successful or not, but was really using the maltster to help us create flavors that can only be achieved otherwise with decoction. And we have both brew houses only have a single step infusion capability. We don't have the ability to decoct or do temperature program mashing. Just not, I mean, I have attempted it at the downtown brewery before I think years ago I figured out a Rube Goldberg way of dealing with the brew house and the work stream to make basically a harm system. And I wanted to get a ferulic acid rest for a Hefeweizen to see if I can boost the clove character in it. I don't know how successful it was, but it was a lot of work. But so choosing malts that will kind of help accentuate maltiness, and I get chocolate, bread, toast out of this beer.
So you mentioned recipes kind of evolve. I've always assumed it was my imagination, but I feel like this one in particular has changed over the years. What can you tell us about what changed in the progress and life of this beer?
I wish I could. I mean, honestly, so we do keep pretty substantial records. Every, they're in a bit of disarray from time to time, but, you know, we have notebooks. Every brew gets a brew sheet like this, and then a handwritten brew sheet that we're actually writing in, we build in this recipe, and, you know, it's we're writing down the pH and the gravities and whatnot. And, we have 3-ring binders this thick that go back all the way to the beginning. And I can track those changes that way, or at the production brewery, on the computer, we can kind of track changes over time. I would say, Jake, that probably the biggest changes are probably ops, and also the supplier of the aromatic malt has changed from time. You know, like we haven't always used Dingemans. And I believe we used Aramis hops in this at one time. So those will be the differences that I can immediately remember. But any other questions? Yeah.
Your first batch was a little bit less than half the size here. Was it brewed downtown? This one at the production facility?
This was brewed, this beer right here that you're drinking right now was brewed at production. I could have brought 6 packs of it, but I was bringing growlers, so I just filled a growler of it at the bar. So we actually, the beers that we serve downtown, I'd say probably half of them are produced downtown, and half of them are kegs that I myself or Tommy bring back and forth between the 2 breweries at a given time. And there are beers that make it out to the marketplace that originate from the downtown brewery. They just do so on draft. They're not packaged.
So as just a brewer, I know you said you didn't use decoction or just trying to understand the 50-cent words. So what is an explanation of decoction? And then when you were trying to do a ferulic acid rest, what does that do for brewing and why?
Ferulic acid kind of helps boost the clove-like character in certain wheat beers.
They got 13-degree rest.
Yeah.
They boost that core vital.
Yeah.
So you
compound.
Yeah.
Precursor.
Yeah.
So you make
exactly.
start there, so you mash it at 113.
Yeah. So yeah, mashing in 113, but then I had to, you know, bring up the temp slowly to get to a saccharification temperature. So you know, it was a big pain in the butt.
Is it just cooking the grain to get it kind of like caramelized, or
What's that?
is it like kind of?
Yeah, there's a different compounds that act at different levels, so.
Yeah, it's exactly like he says. It helps boost for vinyl white. I can
remember yeah, those enzymes denature at higher temperatures.
But decoction is a process in where you take a portion of the mash and you know and then boil it. It's usually a pretty, they said, I never understood it. It's like they said the thickest part of the mash, and then you boil it, and it just seems like you're gonna burn the hell out of it. I know in commercial settings they're not doing that.
They're trying to promote more Maillard reaction production.
Yeah, exactly.
So we just add higher kiln malts.
Exactly. So I mean, we use melanoid for that character. So this malt, melanoid, is kind of what we're trying to, you know, cheat with.
Yeah. I mean, we've done a decoction at Micro Gang, and it's kind of a pain in the ass.
It's a pain in the ass. It screws everything up.
I think there are benefits if you can do it. There are, I mean, there's subtle benefits. I mean, the prettiest Helles or Pilsner are probably going to be decocted. You know, there's like nuanced levels of maltiness that you can get. But that's not a reality for us. So we try and do the best we can with, the maltsters do a lot of work for us. So we just use their handiwork. So yeah, once again, a higher mash, and this guy, pretty similar numbers to that first beer. I mean, a 12.9 starting gravity, 1052, and finishes at the same spot. So pretty similar.
Basically, it's like you're doing like a 145 manage by the time you get out there, everything's converted.
Is it good?
Alright, so this next beer coming out is something a little unique. You don't see it very often in the United States. And I think it's a pretty successful version of this style. It's the first time we've ever brewed it. Obviously make changes next time we brew it. But I've been pretty happy with it. It's the name of it is Alphonse and the style is Cherny Pivo. Cherny Pivo is a Czech black lager. And I first experienced that style in Prague at Ufleku, which is the world's oldest brew pub.
Wow.
Oldest continuously running brew pub. It's been running since the 15th century.
Where is it?
It's in Prague. Yeah. And so the name of the beer is after I bring my art history into it. There's Art Nouveau, Czech Art Nouveau artist named Alphonse Mucha. And also in Prague, if you ever go there, he has a massive, it's called the Slav Epic. And each one of the paintings is probably as big as this panel here. And there's, I think, 22 of them. And it's all, they're portrait oriented, and they're all about the Slav history of the Slav people. But cool spot, cool place. I love Ufleku. Ufleku is one of those love-hate places. It's kind of akin to the opera of Prague, it's like it's kind of annoying at times. There's a lot of drunk people in there, but I got it when there was some really good beer being made, and so this is their Cherny Pivo, and so I wanted to make I made a Tom Mave Pivo, which is a lighter version. It's more like a dunkel. And I was like, I want to make a Cherny Pivo. But one of the things I remember about it is being, just like, it didn't have any of the acrid quality of the roast malts. And I was like, well, how am I going to do that? So obviously I used some de-bittered black malts and carafa. So they take the husk off before they roast it. And so it's not as bitter. And I use chocolate. That's an immense amount of chocolate and carafa in this recipe. It's probably too much, but what's different about it is that these malts were not incorporated in the mash. So I mashed them in, I had Tommy mash them in with cold water the night before in the mash tun. And then in the morning, we came in and we drained the mash tun into buckets And reserve that dark extract. And there's no sugar content, it's basically just a flavoring agent, like cold brew coffee. And reserve that until whirlpool. So not until after the kettle had been turned off and we were about to whirlpool. So then we added it back at that point, and that enabled us to not over acidify the mash and leach out unwanted qualities from the mash and achieve kind of that dark malt character without being acrid, or at least I don't think it's acrid. And once again, use the smoke malt, kind of a little spice. This uses Czech Saaz hops. I guess you won't see it until the next slide. We also, you can't see it, but there was a dry hop on this as well. So of Czech Saaz.
Gotcha.
But yeah, this started as a pretty big beer. It's like starting gravity 13.8, and that's 1055 beer. But there's a lot of that dark malt extract does not really ferment out. So it's there's a lot of residual gravity left. So this beer finished at 4.1 Plato, which would be 1016. But it doesn't taste like syrupy sweet like a 1016 beer would. I don't know, I'm pretty happy with it. This beer was in the tanks for 54 days prior to filtration. And one of I'll tell you the changes I would make next time would be to not use as much chocolate. Probably tone down the quantity of dark malt that I use and just make it a little more nuanced.
I think it's awesome.
Oh, thanks.
This is my vote for going into production.
Thank you.
Can you kind of explain your thought process on how you did the cold mash in and like why you did that? And like if you've done it with other beers before?
I've never done it with other beers. There is a commercial product called Cinnamar that Fireman produces that is essentially a dark malt extract that you can use to, they tout it as a coloring fix. So if you had a beer that wasn't quite as dark as you'd like it to be, you could add this, and you can add that, I believe, post filtrate or post fermentation. So you can add that, I believe, maybe you add it to the fermenter prior to filtration, but sometimes it gets added to the kettle for certain beers. I don't use it, so I'm not quite certain, but I thought, I'll make my own extract and I'll have it be more flavorful, less neutral than what that is. And I thought about cold brew coffee or the process. We've done that before. We've had coffee grounds steep overnight that we introduced into beer that's in conditioning tanks. And so I don't know, I thought this would be a good means of introducing all that flavor. And I think it was largely successful. Like I said, we'll tweak it, we'll make it a little different.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I'm curious in the R&D sense, like how many rounds do you go through from start to adopting it?
It just depends. Honestly, sometimes it's fly by the seat. Like Northern Lights, I don't know if you guys have had that.
Yes.
That went into production without a single pilot batch.
Wow.
And I really like that beer, so I think I lucked out. Yeah. It's a little scary, but, you know, this, something like this, I honestly, I feel like, I'm surprised to get the level of, acceptance for this beer that I'm getting. Although there's a great resurgence and interest in Guinness. And actually, that Guinness was one of the inspirations for this beer as well, because I know for a fact that Guinness, you know, is produced in many, many plants, but the dark malt extract that is used in every single Guinness product, Guinness beer, is produced at the Lionsgate Brewery. And that's basically, they're producing a blonde beer that they add a dark malt extract to after fermentation. So
How's the scale up go from your small initial production to pilot to big production? Is it typically proceed as expected, or you have
I mean,
issues, or?
no, generally not. I mean, I think at least for our systems are so similar to one another in terms of their overall makeup. I mean, they were produced by the same company in the same, you know, era. Our production brew house was, I think, commissioned the same year as our downtown brew pub brew house, but it's much larger, and it was used for many years as Widmer's brew house. And then we purchased it from Widmer when they upsized. The main difference, I think, that is that the beers downtown are on a direct fire kettle, and the beers production brewery go through a calandria, and so it's steam as the heat source, and so we get more caramelization in the downtown brewery, so things are a little bit more caramel in character.
So following up on that question, then, like, if this beer, you're like, I want to try it out, do you start with like a homebrew size batch, or you just go all out?
This is, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the thing is, I know what the ingredients do. I know our processes are tight, you know, that we know what we're doing. It's fairly predictable if you know what the ingredients are, that you're gonna get a certain outcome. Now, like I said, it could take tweaking over time to get it exactly where you want it, but and maybe that's just like I'm not a risk taker in a lot of ways, but with brewing I can be, just because I feel like confident that my knowledge of the ingredients is sound enough that I can do it. It's kind of like being a chef, you know. Okay, so the last beer that we're gonna taste tonight is Planetary Alignment. So this technically, I guess, could be considered an ale just because of the fermentation temperatures. It is the same yeast strain as everything else that we've tasted tonight, Augustiner. But it's, you know, variably called cold IPA, India Pale Lager. I think what craft brewers are leaning towards now is like West Coast Pills. I don't know, whatever. It's an IPA, and so this uses a couple of hops that you might not be familiar with. This estate grown Comet is Comet's a hop that it's kind of a citrusy American variety. We use it in our in very small amounts in our free state lager. But the estate grown Comet is pretty different. It's more tropical in nature, and it's grown on Crosby Farms in Oregon. And so we got a hold of some of that, and then the Citra and Talus, those are both you know, lupulin pellets, so high lupulin content, not a lot of plant material in those pellets. We use all pellets in the brewery. We don't use whole leaf hops or anything like that. Citra, I'm sure you're probably familiar with. Talus is a big contributor to this beer, I think, and especially in the finish. It's got that pink grapefruit character to it. The finish. This also gets a fermentation dry hop. We use that in the Academiac. It's actually a big pain in our ass because of that. Because we have a fermentation dry hop in the Academiac, which is our #1 seller. It's our #1, and we produce that at least probably between 6 and 8 batches a month at our production facility. It's a yeast dead end because we can't repitch. Once we add the hops there at the end of fermentation, we can't recollect that yeast. So it becomes a scheduling headache. But the fermentation dry hop adds to the fruity character, to the tropical character. There's some biotransformation that happens with the hop compounds and the yeast interacting. And generally they can produce these tropical esters that you would get otherwise.
How many days into fermentation do you dry hop?
Depends on the beer, but this beer, 60% 70% attenuation. So generally we try and aim for the lower part, but the timing, that could be overnight. And so my production brewers are pretty darn good about, we've got things down so that there's some predictability, but they're pretty good. We all live pretty darn close to the brewery, so they will, say, I gotta come back at 7, or I gotta come back at 8 to do the fermentation dry hop. And yeah, it's a big contributor. I don't think Yakiniak would be as successful if we didn't do it. In fact, we've tried because we really wanted to, we wanted to be able to repitch from that. And so we did the R&D happen downtown where we did batches downtown that didn't have a fermentation dry hop. It had a traditional dry hop. And it had a traditional dry hop anyway, but it wasn't as successful. So, but getting back to your question, generally we try and, other than the fermentation dry hop, we try and get as much yeast out of there before we dry hop for a normal dry hop. And so we will actually put pressure on the tank after fermentation for a day or two, low pressure, and then drop the temp just a hair to facilitate the yeast dropping out. And then we'll pull everything that we can off the cone and degas and add hops to the top of the fermenter. It could be a mess if you don't do it right. Yeah, you don't want to bung it too early and create nucleation sites for the pellets to just, I don't know if you, yeah, I'm sure you've seen on social media brewers that dry hop and there's a geyser coming out of their tank. It's not fun. I remember one of the tweaks that we used to brew double batches. We have a double batch fermenter downtown. And I mean, I love that, you know, this was way before anybody was doing. And we weren't even really doing that much dry hopping in craft brewing. And Steve had the idea that he wanted to dry hop Ad Astra, which was in this double batch fermenter. And all we have was a port about that big to put hops in. And then this beer had been already bunged and there had been top pressure on it for at least a day or more. And it was pretty full. And he decided to, you know, put some hops in through the top and it just rocketed out of there. And so I mean, he had to put his hand over it and I had to go grab the butterfly and we had to, you know, finagle it on top. But it worked out. So yeah, this beer was fermented at 64 degrees and we actually cropped yeast from that Cherney Pivo, which I was a little uneasy about, but it worked out actually. I typically don't like to, you know, darker beers are a little bit harder to crop from. They don't have something about their, I don't know if it's a pH issue or what, but they're a little more difficult. And this beer was not lagered. I mean, but it had a fair amount of residency time in the tank. I mean, I think it was probably 20 days into it, that 21 days that we filtered it. But yeah, thanks to everybody here. Yeah, got some of this good. We lost one of our brewers last week. Scott he actually taught me on the system downtown when I moved back. And then Scott moved away and had a successful career in California and moved back to Lawrence a couple of years ago and wasn't quite the same brewer that he, you know, had been, but we worked on our packaging line and passed away unexpectedly about a week ago. And so I don't know if any of you knew him, but he was a real sweet guy. And so his memorial is on Saturday. So we're gonna have a toast on the front porch of Free State at noon. So if you're out and about, having to do well, come raise a glass. Thanks. Thanks, guys.
Gonna ever make Crimson Berry Ale again?
Probably not.
That's what Steve Broad said. He said it was too much trouble putting in the.
We do lots of things in that vein that are, you know, but we're not gonna do that. Sorry.
Is the Yakimania your recipe?
It is. Awesome. Yes. Yakimaniac, Storm Chaser.
Northern Lights.
Northern Lights. Thanks, guys.
Thanks very much. Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Jeff.
Of course. All right.
Anybody doesn't know, that's from our brew day now, what, 3 years ago when we brewed wild or what was it, something ride, Bizarre Ride.
I still have a few stickers actually.
Nice. I know I have a sticker floating around from that.
It was like 35% rye, did not match. Yeah, too much.
Any closing words on the tasting, Jake or Josh?
No,
All right.
how you guys liking the seminar tasting combo?
That's good.
Yeah, love it. Love it. Fantastic.